They're selling you all wolf tickets, people. You're eating them right up.
Hey, pussy, are you still there?
I back. Trust me, I back.
But I'm not impressed by your performance.
You'll do nothing. You'll do nothing. Shut your fucking mouth, you'll do nothing. You'll do fucking nothing. Not one of you will do nothing.
I'll tell you what, bro. I was out there, I was fighting all the hitters, bro. You ain't fought no hitters.
Come on, guys. It's normal.
I'm not saying I would fight you. I would kill you.
John, do you think I'm just gonna sit there and let you kill me, John? I mean, really?
No, don't be scared, homie.
I'd like to take this chance to apologize to absolutely nobody. The double champ does what the fuck he wants.
I'm gonna beat you into the living death. I mean, maybe that's your job, but where I come from, people like that get slapped.
That's fucking illegal.
Nick Diaz, you just shook up the world. How's that feel?
Hey, I'm not surprised, motherfuckers.
Yeah, this is a simulated death match. And you haven't simulated anybody's death yet.
I said it last year. We're not here just to take part. We're here to take over.
What is the game plan going in against him?
The game plan is you go in there, hit him with some good shit, don't get hit, and come home with a pocket full of cash.
Who the fuck is that guy?
Everybody's on steroids. The whole UFC, everybody.
I'm gonna go home tonight. I'm gonna drink a Coors Light. That's a Coors Light because Bud Light won't pay me nothing.
Do you want to be a fighter? That is my question.
Any of you radio personalities think you want smoke? Call me Mr. I want
Yes.
smoke.
What is up? What is up? Mixed Combat Radio family, another daily edition of the show, live 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. in the UK, on YouTube, obviously podcast form, on iTunes Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, etc., to discuss all things boxing, MMA, and everything in between. Kind of a light show, but we do have some controversial topics to get to with obviously Jon Jones and USADA and a new scandal, to sort of put it lightly, or actually maybe put it harsh. I don't know yet. I can't wait to discuss that one with you guys. Listeners, remember, call in 323-870-4051, or if you are international, email me, mixedcombatradio@gmail.com if you want to get that international call-in link. So what else? Some other housekeeping news. Hit the like button, subscribe, share the show, all that YouTube stuff. Yeah, that's about it. Shout out to everyone in the chat. The Boxing Idiot, Eric Roses, Boxing Blunts, Kyle, Unbiased Boxing, Rubisky, and Bomani, and Santiago already in the phone line queue. Remember, press 1 when you're in that phone line to sort of get it activated. But let's just go. Let's get into it because I really want to get to obviously the Jon Jones stuff, but as customary and as per usual, we're going to keep boxing in the first part of the show, MMA in the second part, and then obviously callers in the third part. And again, 323-870-4051. Pound for pound support of Niger, making her presence known. What up, Niger? But let's get into it, like I said, because in boxing, I'm going to try to be nice, but you know me. If you listen to this show in any capacity, you know that I have a penchant for being a little bit critical of institutions and promoters and networks, etc. The World Boxing Super Series deserves some criticism here, as they have announced their third weight class for their second season, which will be on DAZN, and it's been announced that it will be a second Cruiserweight tournament. Yeah, so I don't know really how critical to be. Let me get through all of the information we have thus far, or rumors we have thus far of what the tournament might be. By way of Michael Benson, Beginner's News, from, I always forget this guy's name. Good guy, I met him, I think, once. We're going to get to his particular account. But an Eastern European reporter, I forget his name, I'm going to butcher it, so I won't. But some rumored sort of but fighters in this tournament: Marius Briedis, Yunero Dorticos, both former champions; Krzysztof Glowacki, another former champion; Matsuits Masternak, Andrew Tabiti, awesome prospect; Maxim Vlasov, Ruslan Vafar, and at this point in time when it was reported, Murat Gassiev as a reserve, and then it was later reported by that same Eastern European reporter. You can find him on Garnek Media on Twitter, Garnek Media. Just one of the better reporters in terms of the Eastern European market, getting the names out there, getting the information out there. I just want to give him his just due. But he's saying, per good sources, Murat Gassiev will not be part of Season 2 of the World Boxing Super Series Cruiserweight Tournament, which I don't blame him, because I know he has a shoulder injury and such, and I can see him just taking some time off. But, however, let's get to, obviously, the announced bracket thus far. I'm not going to say utter garbage. I think Tabiti is a silver lining in it. I think this could be a breakout sort of moment for him. But there was no need for this sequel. You know, like in the long-running trend of unnecessary sequels in Hollywood, this is an unnecessary sequel for boxing. Nobody needs this tournament right after the first one unified the entire division, and then that guy that unified it all is no longer in this tournament. There's just no need for it. There's other divisions where this could have been needed, in my opinion. Super middleweight, minimum weight, flyweight. Hell, featherweight would have been fantastic. Imagine a tournament where you have like Leo Santa Cruz, Gary Russell Jr., Oscar Valdez, and the list goes on and on. That would have been amazing. But no, we get reruns. You know, we get I Love Lucy on, was that TV Land, whatever, at 3 a.m. in the morning. This is what that feels like to me. And while, again, Andrew Tabiti is a amazing prospect, I think he is improving with each fight. He seems to have a lot of potential to make a name for himself in this division, potentially be a foil for Usyk maybe in the future. But other than that, it's guys coming off losses. It's guys we don't know. And then an amazing prospect that I think most of us are hoping wins it. Because if Tabiti doesn't sort of get over with this tournament, if he, to use that pro wrestling term, then what's the point of this? To announce the third best cruiserweight? Because again, Gassiev and Usyk are the two best cruiserweights in the division. They're not in this tournament. Tony Bellew, whatever you want to think of him, he's not in this tournament. Marco Huck is not in this tournament. There's some other people. Dennis Lebedev, I think, is moving up to heavyweight. There are just some people that are not in this tournament that I think would have added to it, and they're obviously not here. Nigel talking to Santis, and actually have the Blog Talk link to call in. I'm just very shy. It's not a Blog Talk link, by the way. It's a different total link. But anyways, Nigel, definitely you should call in. Don't be shy. You called in on championship rounds on Patreon. Come on. What are you thinking? Come on. Anyways, I definitely let me know in the comment section below. Definitely let me know in the chat below. Are you hyped on this in any way? Does Tabiti, the inclusion of a guy and a prospect like Tabiti, do enough for you where you can sort of deal with Usyk not being in it, or just the fact that we're having this tournament to begin with? Because again, I think there was potential with what this system is for the World Boxing Super Series to really capitalize on its structure. In an age where I think we're getting a lot of fights happening where we're happy about. Like, a lot of fights are happening without marination, I would say, in today's age. Even though I would say that's always been sort of an overstated factor in boxing. I definitely will say that World Boxing Super Series is just an added tool to the industry and to the market to make the best fight the best. And again, this is not the best in the division fighting. It's not. The best are clearly out of this tournament. Similar to the super middleweight tournament, even though that had, I think, silver linings in George Groves, Chris Eubank, who's a name, Callum Smith, who's an undefeated prospect. There was some saving grace there. George Groves at least being some version of a champion, or at least a champion. We have none of that here. The champion is not going to do it. The guy that holds every belt in the entire division is not going to be in this tournament. And I forget who asked it before the show even started in the chat about Usyk vacating his belts. At this point, there is no information, no rumors, no whispers about that happening. And to be quite honest, I hope it does not. Because I think him not being the undisputed champion at the time he fights Bellew in November, I think takes away a little bit of the luster from it. Even though we all know what's up, like we all know that it's still Usyk, you know, I think the announcers and just the promotional bent of it, not being able to say, this is the undisputed Cruiserweight champion. No other guy holds the belt in this entire division than this guy, and this is the guy that left that division to go fight David Haye. I think if we don't have that storyline in this fight, I think that kind of takes away some hype, some luster from it, some natural build-up, in my opinion. But yeah, just want to at least, this is definitely breaking news today. I am not too excited about it, to say the least. Speaking of things I'm not too excited about, the Brian Jennings-Alexander Dimitrikov ESPN fight, the television numbers have come back. And I just want to quickly say before I even mention the number that this boxing scene headline is atrocious. I know Keith Idek is not the one editing the article and posting it. I know that's an editor's job. But yeah, that's awful. That's fucking ridiculous. Saying Jennings Dimitrikov, ESPN double average 686,000 viewers. And it's just clearly not doubling the average. First off, they don't even mention the average in this entire article. They mention the last 3 events in the summertime, which, you know, did lower, like 534 for the Eugenius Kavaleskis versus Juan Carlos Abreu fight, 518,000 viewers for the Regis Prograis Juan Velasquez fight. So that's not doubling the average. So I don't know where boxing scene is getting that number from. There's literally nothing in this article talking about that. I think it's just bad headlines. And again, I've always mentioned this here and there about the way numbers and stats are framed by media and established media in boxing is always interesting to see. Just putting that out there. If you ever are really bored one day, just look up Keith Idek's, all of his articles on the boxing scene, because he mainly does all the ones for viewership. He's that guy for boxing, really. And just look at them. Look at the headlines. Always fascinating to see. And again, I don't think it's Keith's fault. Again, he's not the editor. He's not the one publishing it. Speaking as an editor of websites before, that's just not how it's run. It's not his fault, but it is definitely a boxing scene issue. But digressing from that overall topic and that probably rabbit hole, these numbers, I'm actually kind of surprised by. Because again, you know, talking about previous fights, Regis Prograis, who has a lot of push behind him from a guy like Peter Berg, who is a Hollywood director, Mile 22, the Mark Wahlberg, Ronda Rousey movie that just came out last week. That's a Peter Berg directed film. I have spoke to the management team, or somebody that works in the management team. I haven't spoke to Peter Berg specifically, but I've spoken to somebody that works with Peter Berg in that team with Regis before, and they just have a different mentality when it comes to the business side. So I'm surprised the marketing power they put into him, his crossover appeal to MMA. I'm surprised his viewership didn't do more. It'll be interesting to see going forward what he can do, and if this is just a one-time occurrence of him sort of doing a really mediocre number. The fight. Let me get to it before the Kavaleskis and Ron Carlos Abreu fight doing more viewership than that one. Just surprising, even though it's marginally better. That is still surprising. The Brian Jennings fight did more viewership than the Gilberto Ramirez Alexis Angulo event. That's not good if you're top ranked looking at Gilberto Ramirez. And again, Brian Jennings, the guy that I've had a lot of criticism of, he is at least pulling in better viewership than some of these other events. And let's be honest, though, all these events have not been good in the slightest. So therefore, these aren't just great numbers, period, in my opinion. These are bad viewerships overall, I would say. If you're in this ESPN market, with a greater overall subscription rate than HBO, if you're top ranked, you should be pulling in better views than this, point blank and simple. And they should be putting better cards together. But moving off of that, one last sort of boxing news to get to. The Golden Boy card on that Friday did an abysmal 189,000 viewers on ESPN2. Not really surprising, though. That card was not a good card. I didn't watch it. That's indicative, really, of what audience you're trying to get. Even if the hardcores were disinterested in that number. Though Jack Goodman, who reported this number, says that it is average for ESPN2 for Golden Boy events on Friday. That just shows you that's not a good time slot and that they're not putting good cards together or putting any promotional and marketing tools around it, let's be honest. But that is it for boxing. So as we transition over to MMA, quick shout out to everyone in the chat again. Boxing Blunts, Daniel Simpson, the Boxing Idiot, Rabisky, Real Nija, who else? Bamani, Eric Rosas. Well, you guys, I hope you guys are having a good one. Santiago saying, I think he fixed his air conditioning in his car. Good for you, man. That shit must suck. But let's get into, obviously, the MMA news. Not necessarily of the day. This has been one of those news stories that's slowly broken. I slightly reported on this maybe a week ago. I forget the exact timing of when I touched on it, and my initial reporting was wrong, and most people's was wrong. It was when it first came out that Jon Jones got tested, that news came up that he got tested. It was assumed he's been out of the USADA testing pool until that test, or until maybe, a relatively close point to that test, maybe a week or two before. But that was not the case. It came to light that Jon Jones has never left the USADA testing pool, and that is, in fact, his one and only PED test of the entire year. And this is a guy that's tested positive for PEDs twice. Jon Jones is the guy himself, is the one that let out the bag, replying to a fan on Twitter saying, @JohnnyBones, in USADA pool and sharing training videos. Well, this is tremendous. List is endless who I want to see in fight. And then John Bones quote tweeting it saying, "Glad you enjoyed a few seconds of training footage I shared the other day. Just wanted to let everyone know I never left the testing pool. Not even for a day." Oh, this is going to get interesting. And to sort of springboard into some talking points, Brendan Schaub, who guys I've often disagreed with. I think he's kind of a joke at times, to be honest. But I think he nailed some of his points about this whole situation, where Jon Jones is a guy that's tested positive twice, that is currently dealing with not suspension but arbitration, basically, with USADA with a positive PED test. Now it's coming out that he has been tested once this year. He was tested 9 times last year. Been tested once this year. Boxing Blunts, I'll get to that comment in a second. Let me deal with this topic first. And there's been a lot of, I'm not going to say rumors, that's the wrong word. There's been criticism of the UFC's relationship with USADA, and the times it seems to correlate, or I would say that USADA's decision-making sometimes correlates with the business-making decisions of the UFC. And a lack of seemingly credibility in this testing program. This is a prime red flag for that criticism to be necessarily true. And we need to start looking into it maybe more. The fact that the greatest fighter of all time, a guy that's tested positive numerous times, and you're not testing him. And again, when it was Jon Jones wasn't in the testing pool, and therefore he could not be tested, it was different. It was a little bit understandable. And even that kind of didn't make sense when that news came out, but I was like, okay, that makes sense. in a way. And now this comes out that no. Jon Jones never left that testing pool. He could have always been tested this year, and they just chosen not to. There's been no money either from the UFC or from USADA into testing him. Why is that? Not Fat Apple, sorry. Boxing Blunt saying he's basically having a great day, and I agree with you. That seems like a great day. Pizza and dabs. Salute to you. When you look at a guy like Daniel Cormier, who's been tested, I forget the number he said. I think it was like over 60 times throughout his career. And you look at the amount of times Jon Jones has been tested, it's pretty absurd. And this is actually like public information. I'll show you guys the webpage you can all go to right now and look at how many times he's been tested, how many times fighters have been tested, etc. USADA.org/testing/results/athlete-test-history/ That is the URL. 2017, Jon Jones was tested 9 times. I can change this to 2018. Search 1 time. 1 time. USADA, UFC. That's that. It's pathetic what this is. And again, I've talked about this, and I know there's better people that talk about it. Like Luke Thomas, I think, has done a phenomenal job furthering this narrative in the media and just overall in the public combat sports zeitgeist. And I think the inefficiency in PD testing, I think, innately puts the system in a corrupt position, in a fallible position, where it becomes almost distrustworthy. And I would argue it is distrustworthy. The current PD regulatory system we have now is a distrustworthy system we have. And unless we change it, unless we have actual PD regulatory reform, it's always going to be this way. Where there's loopholes, there's ways out of it. Where the promoter is always the one. I shouldn't say promoter, because in boxing it's a little bit different, but sometimes it's for promoter. When these entities that have financial connections to these fighters and their purses, which they do, the sanctioning bodies do in boxing, the promoters obviously do in both sports, why would they enact policy, enforce policy that would hurt their bottom line? That just doesn't happen. It's just one of those systems and paradigms we have in this sport, and not only this sport, but just sporting culture overall, that is so far behind. And then not only that, the public narratives and optics around it is even behind that. We are still dealing with 1960s and 70s era Soviet PD hysteria and the fear of that. We're still dealing with those talking points. So real effective PD reform nowadays can't even happen because we're still dealing with topics that are decades old. The paradigm is in 2018, but the public opinion of it is in 1978. Anthony Walker bringing up one point, and I want to actually add to it, saying USADA was only brought on to inflate the value of the company. Not only that, I think it was also brought in as an obvious legal, not defense, but legal defense. Because when it does happen, because it will eventually, when a fighter has a Pritchard Colon-like situation, or even worse than that in the UFC, them having the USADA deal, having all these particulars are legal defenses for a potential lawsuit. That I think is another factor to why the UFC brought on USADA, and like Anthony said, also brought on it to value the company. Aaron Munoz, that's funny. But it's definitely let me know in the comment section below. Let me know in the chat what you think about this. Is this a scandal? Should Jon Jones have been tested more than one time in 2018? Is this indicative of maybe a corruptive system we have with the USADA deal with the UFC? And is it also indicative of just the overall PD regulatory system we have in sports and the failure of that system? You know, time and time again, we see failure after failure after failure of them having the ineptitude of not being able to accurately test these fighters at the very top. Let's move on to some more interesting news. Dana White saying the UFC brand now worth $7 billion after the ESPN deal.
Are you off your tits? Have you been smoking something?
And like I've actually seen, I think it was John Nash, as he had a bloody elbow, make the point that in time this could be true. Maybe not obviously right now, but you know, in 2021, there's a potential for them to get to this point, perhaps. I'm not going to say it's true or not. I'm just going to say it's Dana White being Dana White. Is the UFC worth $7 billion instead of $4 billion now? I highly doubt it. Let's be honest. But who knows? I'm not going to speak. Anthony's saying, speaking of inflated value. Oh. From the tower. Like Lee Harvey Oswald, man. Sniping Dana White there, Anthony. Definitely let me know in the comment section below in the chat. Do you believe it? Is it worth $7 billion now? Will it be? Is it just a matter of time to where the UFC, after the ESPN deal, is going to have another maybe MMA boom? You know, not to sort of go into complete hypothetical fantasy land, but it seems like there's a change in the winds, like for the UFC right now. I feel like the last 9 months or so, maybe 9 to 12 months, have been, they've been up and down for them, just to put it lightly. I feel like pay-per-views hit all-time lows, obviously. I think viewership has dropped to all-time lows. But it seems like things are changing slightly in terms of just the atmosphere around the sport. I feel like the Conor coming back helps that just drastically, in my opinion. I think the lightweight golden era that we have here is helping that. I think Daniel Cormier, Brock Lesnar, for whatever people want to say about that, I think has breathed a little bit of life into the short term of the UFC. Talking about Jon Jones, the idea that him coming back is now a near possibility. I think that's helped a little bit. I think net positively, I think that's helped. I think storylines like Woodley against the Darren Tills of the world, the Colby Covingtons of the world, I think that has gained some traction that's maybe slightly breaking that bubble. It'll be interesting to see sort of what happens going forward with that. But moving on to another piece of news, speaking of the UFC, Paul Gift sending a screenshot of a Ali Abdelaziz declaration here. And this is all piggybacking off of the story I talked about either yesterday or last week about the Mark Hunt, the class action lawsuit, and the UFC not wanting to release Mark Hunt's contract out of fear of X, Y, and Z happening. And their X, Y, and Z was actually reasons to release said contract. And now Ali Abdelaziz, a manager for a lot of fighters, I should say, in the UFC and in MMA overall, a very prolific one, to put it lightly, has now come out and said basically that it's a bad idea for his fighters to know what each others are making because of potential kidnapping, extortion schemes, family and friends requesting money, and a whole litany of absurd reasons. Though quickly, I will touch on the kidnapping extortion as that, I think, a section of his clients that could be actually realistically possible for, that there's a worry about that. But then again, Ali, maybe you stop hiring fighters, or I should say managing fighters that work with warlords in Eastern Europe, maybe you don't have to deal with the whole like kidnapping, extortion, potential death threats, Russian mob, that whole shit. It helps not to manage that situation. And Ali obviously has a lot of connections with Kadyrov over in Chechnya, who's had a litany of war crimes and human rights violations against him. And he's basically sent all of his fighters over there to do PR work for him. So maybe you shouldn't do that. You don't have to worry about kidnapping and extortion schemes. Just putting that out there. Now, to actually table that, because I think that's fucking ridiculous, the net positive of fighters having their contracts known industry-wide is that it will innately drive up the revenue that these fighters are making. Keeping them in the dark has never worked in sports when it comes to financials. Look at every other major sport. That just is not an occurrence. And on top of that, fighters, the hundreds of fighters that are managed by Ali, you need to fire this motherfucker instantly. Instantly. He does not have your best interests at heart. He is conducting bad business against your interests, and God knows how little he is fighting for you in terms of negotiations with the UFC. Because right now he's working with the UFC. You have your manager, if you're one of his fighters, you have your manager working with your promoter to make sure you get paid less. Only in MMA. Only in MMA. But shout out to Ali, always being, just quite honestly, a scumbag. Remember, call in 323-870-4051, or if you want to call in internationally, email me, mixedcombatradio@gmail.com, and I can get you that international call-in link. Last piece of news before we head into callers. So if you want to get in on the phone line, do it right now. Remember, press 1 if you do call in via that number, if you want to get in the phone line. Last piece of news, Gray Maynard fighting Nick Lentz at UFC 229. God damn it. We're going to see Gray Maynard sacrificed to the MMA gods. That guy has been past the hill and chinny since 2013. But it is what it is. But let's move into callers. If we have any. I see Santiago, but I think he's driving. So I don't see you pressing 1, Santiago. If not, we are going to head out of here. So, outro music. If you want to get in, call in before the show's over. You can do it right now. I'll stop the music. Don't worry about it. But it looks like we have no callers. Remember, 323-870-4051. Or internationally, like I said, email me. But yeah, final thoughts, wrapping it up. Jon Jones, USADA. It is what it is at this point. Yes, it's a scandal, but there's very little institutional accountability to any of the players involved here. Whether it's USADA, the UFC, or Jon Jones, there is zero accountability to the situation. Zero. The sheriffs are the ones that are potentially in on it. Like that. The people that USADA is the entity that should be keeping all this accountable, and they are innately involved in this corrupt act. It's ridiculous. Roblox Super Series. God, fucking atrocious. Oh, I see Kyle jumping on. I assume he's gonna press 1. Let's just go to Kyle. There's no reason he's gonna call in and not want me to go to him. Yes, press 1. Kyle, how you doing, man?
Hello.
Hello.
Yo, what's going on, man?
Nothing much. How you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you today?
Good. Just so we can do it for audio, can you turn down the radio in the back?
Yeah, one second.
Either it's like you're on speakerphone or whatever it is.
No, my speakerphone's off, bro.
What about now?
Is that better?
I can still hear me in the back. Do you have like your computer on or something?
No.
Huh. Well, just go through your stuff. I won't talk then because you don't have a feedback. Just me.
All right. Well, no, I was just gonna share my opinion on the whole USADA thing. Just, I don't know. I think they got good and bad things about them. Nothing. I don't know. I don't know how much I can say about it, other than, I mean, is it? Do you think it's really cleaning up the sport?
I think there is some level of cleaning up. Like, obviously, you get the low-hanging fruit with this program, in my opinion. You get the people that use shitty PEDs. You get that sort of situation. Do I think it's cleaning up the elite, probably PED use in the sport, where the top 10 fighters are using, the top 5 fighters are using? No. I don't think it's cleaning up that aspect of it at all. And I think there should be questions about the relationship of USADA and the UFC and how there is really no checks and balances to that relationship.
Yeah, what I was going to say is it seems like they're more focused on just punishing guys rather than actively cleaning up the sport from these offenders.
Well, how do you differentiate the two? How do you clean up the sport without punishing users? Or not without, but you know what I mean? Like, don't those happen in conjunction with each other?
Yeah, it's hard to say. It's hard to say.
I'll put it this way. There's nothing innovative about this. There's nothing innovative about the USADA program. I know that was sort of levied to them a lot heading into this sort of relationship when it first started out, how innovative it was for combat sports. But this is the same program we have basically in other major sports. The MLB basically has this program. And there are people that get through that program as well. I think PD regulation is always behind the curve on PED use. I think that is also a contributing factor here. That USADA's techniques do not actually align with the elite usage that fighters can have.
Yeah, I feel you. And other than that, Ray Maynard versus Nick Lentz, not sure how much interest I have in that, but I guess I'll take Nick Lentz in that one.
Yeah, you have.
Did you see the whole thing about UFC fighter Desmond Green getting in that car wreck?
Yeah, I did. I didn't know if I should really talk about it because I don't know much about it, to be quite honest, other than it ended in a few
the article
people.
on it didn't really specify too much. It kind of like insinuated that he might have caused the whole thing, but at the same time, you don't know really.
From what I have last seen on it from Mike Bond over at MMA Junkie, it does look like there will be some legal or criminal, not backlash, but backlash against Desmond. And a lot of it hangs in the potential toxology report. If there's anything in the system...
So do you think his fight with Merbeck is still on?
It's a big question mark right now, unfortunately. Yeah. And when you have a situation where people actually die, where it's manslaughter, I think it's hard to get around that. I think it just is.
Multiple people.
Yeah, and obviously condolences, prayers, best wishes to the families. I in this tragic situation. Sure. I've known people that have died in car accidents. Like it's not a fun time to go through, to put it lightly.
No.
But whatever justice is found here, I don't know if that's going to affect his fighting career. It's just a real clusterfuck of a situation.
Yeah. Well, other than that, I'm not sure what else to say, other than I'm pretty bummed about Romero and Costa not fighting.
Oh, I forgot about that. Thank you for reminding me. Yes, Yoel Romero talking to Ariel Helwani on his new ESPN show, saying that he needs, I think, like 3 to 5 months in recovery for, I think, like broken orbital bone or something like that. And so his fight with Paulo Boachino Costa on UFC 230 is pretty much off. God knows what happens with Boachino going forward. But I've noticed that he's been wearing a tough jersey a lot and like some obscure photos that he's been posting.
Who was?
Bohachina. I don't know if he's going to be... Because obviously there's middleweight coaches for this next Tough season that's filming right now, right? But Bohachina posted a photo of him in a Tough jersey like a week ago. I don't know what's happening with Bohachina, but something is in the works, obviously. You have a guy with that natural stardom. Yeah. You don't put him on a shelf. You keep him active as possible.
No, yeah, I'm a huge fan.
Anything else, Kyle?
No, man, other than that, that's my call, man.
All right, man, you have a good one.
Yep, take it easy.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's been it for today. Aaron Munoz saying, join Patreon, Matt. Thanks for the good boxing news, entertainment while I'm at work. Thank you. Thank you. Always appreciate it. And again, it's for as low as $1. Like, none of the content is cut off at certain prices. The extra show on Sunday is for $1 up. You can get it. We will start giving out T-shirts and stuff like that through Patreon. So if you're on Patreon, before we do get these T-shirts, I am probably going to just give you a free one. So if that's any incentive, go to Patreon for as low as $1 right now, and maybe next month you just get a free shirt for that $1. That could happen. But thank you, Aaron. Deeply, deeply appreciated. This show is 100% like fan driven. All of the revenue in this show is from you guys. You are my board of directors. You are my investors. You keep the content what it is. This show is not what it is without you guys on Patreon. So shout out to everyone on Patreon. If you're not on Patreon, that's fine though. I still love you. It's okay. Like, I understand. It's YouTube. 99.9% of the content I put out is for free because I love what I do. This is fun. I get to do a dream job as my career. So I am just going to put out as much free content for you guys as possible and hope that you guys enjoy it and are willing to donate even slight amounts. But even if you're not going to do that, hit the like button. Share the show. Go leave a review on iTunes. I do read all the reviews on iTunes. So go do that. Even if it's a 1-star, I read them. And I just say, woohoo, we get free shirts. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. So get hyped for that. And I'll be back tomorrow. Same time as always. 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. in the UK. Live on YouTube, Podcast Farm, iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio. Matt, the hipster hunter. Hipsters here, haters beware. Peace.